What's the deal, everybody? It's your boy Shane G. We are back with another episode of Politics as Usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. So please make sure you like, you share, and you subscribe for all the latest content. Purpose of today's video is basically because there's a lot of people. There's a new poll actually out there, and I want to pull that up here in a second. And it's basically that many Americans feel that Biden and Trump are both too similar to each other. And there's not really a difference in voting for president. Um, Now, a lot of the polls are focused on their age specifically. What I want to focus on actually is not their age, but their policies actually, and how similar their policies actually are to one another. That's actually what I want to talk about with you all today, because there still seems Democrats are this, Republicans are this. And my whole goal of this entire show is basically to prove to everybody that they are essentially one and the same. They're both, if you go by traditional standard definitions, they're both right wing parties. They're both capitalist parties. They're both pro war parties. So ultimately, they are, when it comes to the things that matter, they're one and the same. Even with things that are considered more social issues because they particularly affect certain groups more so than others, such as like abortion and things like that. Even with that, Roe versus Wade was codified how long ago? And the Democrats had how many opportunities to codify that into law? Even when it became a big issue last year, the year before, when it was like a real hot button issue, and they had a majority in Congress, in the Senate, and the presidency at that time. They could have codified it then, and they chose not to. So that sort of should let people know that this is all, essentially, it I don't want to call it a game because it's people's lives, but they play it like it's a game. This is WWE, and y'all know I'm a big wrestling fan. This is WWE, and the corporations are, well, I would use the Vince McMahon metaphor, but he's gone. So all of these corporations are, TKO. They're the people that own the WWE. They're the ones who are actually pulling the strings. And then the wrestlers, who are all cool behind the scenes, have to pretend like they hate each other in front of everybody for, to sell the show. That's what politics is in America nowadays. These people are not enemies of each other. They're enemies to us. But anyway, I just want to pull up this new poll really quick. Again, this focuses on their age, but I do think that it reflects a common sentiment that people have, even though they're only speaking about age. I do think that people are starting to wake up to the fact that Biden and Trump are not that different when it comes to policies. Again, I'm not talking about how they talk. I'm not talking about, the stuff that they say they believe in or none of that. I'm talking about on paper when you look at what they actually did. How similar are they? So let's first look at this poll, and then we'll go from there.
Think about the age of the two likely opponents on Election Day. The campaigns of President Biden and former President Trump are also pushing back on separate issues. For Biden, his memory, and for Trump, his comments about NATO. ABC's Em Nguyen has the latest from Washington.
Former President Trump drawing fierce backlash from Democrats and some Republicans after suggesting if he were elected again, the U.S. would not protect NATO countries that aren't spending enough on defense. Trump declaring he would even urge Russia to attack an American ally.
No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay.
President Joe Biden sharply criticizing Trump's words as appalling and dangerous. The White House calling those comments unhinged. The current head of NATO warning that Trump is putting the safety of U.S. troops and their allies at risk. GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley also condemning Trump, saying his approach to boost defense spending was all wrong.
The last thing we ever want to do is side with Russia.
Haley also questioning Trump's mental competency after Trump questioned her husband's military service, claiming Haley's husband deployed to Africa to get away from her.
If you mock the service of a combat veteran, you don't deserve a driver's license, let alone being president of the United States.
Haley then focused her age-related attacks against both Trump
I'm
and
not allowed
Biden.
to like the
As a new
military,
poll shows,
or I'm not allowed to
86% of
dislike
Americans
the
think
military or what the military does. So according to Nikki Haley, if it were up to her, I wouldn't be able to drive a car or have a driver's license because I disrespected somebody that was in the military. Fuck out of here.
1-year-old Biden is too old for another term. That includes 59% who believe he and 77-year-old Trump are too old. Haley again called for both Biden and Trump to take a mental acuity test.
Donald Trump claims that he would pass
That I'm not mad at.
Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't.
Meanwhile, the Senate passed a key test vote on a foreign aid bill that would send assistance to Israel and Ukraine. 18 Republicans helped advance the legislation despite opposition from former President Donald Trump. Em Nguyen, ABC News, Washington.
All right.
Are you tired of?
Definitely tired of it. All right. So, yeah, there was a few interesting things that were said there. Again, they're focused, on the age thing, and they focused on, controversial comments and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, first of all, what is the purpose of NATO? NATO is a military alliance. Trump's point is that NATO countries are not paying the same amount as the United States, but they expect to receive all the same benefits as the United States from NATO, even though we are paying the majority of it. That's his main point. It's not that he doesn't think we should leave NATO or that NATO doesn't serve a function anymore, or that they're just an aggressive force, essentially, that's essentially used as not cannon fodder, but they're essentially used as sort of the world's military on behalf of the United States. Like whatever we want to happen, we can kind of make NATO do on our behalf. So that's sort of the problem with NATO. And Trump is not addressing that problem. He's just saying that they're not paying enough. So he's already, backed off of a lot of the anti-war rhetoric and things like that. So, I mean, the Russia stuff, I'm pretty sure he's just saying for shock value. I'm gonna keep it real. But let's get into this. So one of the main things that people were upset with Donald Trump for when he became president, rightfully so, was using the cages that Obama had built to essentially separate migrant children from their families. Right. That was a big deal. I'm pretty sure everybody remembers the whole kids in cages thing. Right. Now I'm with y'all. That was terrible. And that was a horrible policy and it didn't benefit anybody. So I'm with everyone who was saying that. You know what I mean? However, I hold the same standard for any president who does that. So I'm not just holding Donald Trump accountable. I'm going to hold any president who does that accountable. So let's talk about who else did that. Now, to be fair, this article was written a year ago. I have not found any more recent articles regarding this topic. So just to be all the way transparent, but this comes from PBS. Hundreds of migrant children remain separated from families despite push to reunite them. It's been 2 years since the Biden administration took on the task of reunifying children with their families after they were separated at the southern border under the Trump's administration's zero tolerance policy. While the Biden administration has succeeded in uniting some 600 children with their parents, about 1,000 remain separated. Jeff Bennett spoke with Caitlin Dickerson about the process. So, and then here's the interview. Right. Here's the interview. So they're essentially painting this. You guys can read this on your own, but they're essentially painting this as, oh no, we're desperately trying to reunify all these people. But I also remember that AOC completely changed her tune about the facilities themselves. I remember at first it was, oh my God, this is horrible. They're being put in cages like animals. These aren't dogs, these are children, all of that kind of stuff. Same cages. Biden is now president. She changed her whole tune on the horrors of these cages. They became facilities at this point. So it's like, what changed besides who was president? I thought we didn't like the action that was happening, not who's doing the action. Hundreds of migrant children remain separated. This was as of last year. So they had 2 years and I wonder what the updated numbers are. But all I'm saying is the kids were still in the cages 2 years after Biden became president. And nobody said anything about it. So let's keep going, though. Another thing, everybody said it was terrible and racist. And, isolationist was another word I started seeing get used a lot, where, because Donald Trump wanted to build the wall and, to stop immigration. He wanted to build the wall on the Mexico and United States border. And I remember everybody said that was horrible. Everybody said it was racist. Everybody said that, he just doesn't like Hispanic people, which I actually agree with those sentiments. Not necessarily that building the wall in itself is racist, if you really thought that would assist with immigration. The problem is they know that won't help with immigration, and it was just essentially a virtue signal from the right. That's the real issue with that. And the fact that they were going to have to take people's land in order to accomplish this. There was all sorts of problems with it. So now, do I think Trump doesn't like Hispanic people? Tends to, there are certain patterns that you can look at. And it's like, yeah, that was kind of, like the whole, they're sending criminals and rapists. They're not sending their best. You know what I mean? Essentially painting the picture that all Mexican immigrants are just criminals and they're going to come and rape you and kill you and steal from you and all of that. So, of course, like when you paint a picture, you know what you're doing. He's a marketer, so he knew what he was doing. So, yes. However, the African countries are shithole countries and, we don't want those people coming over here. Those comments, yes, of course. Like there's racial bigotry in there. And to deny that, just you either don't know what racial bigotry is or you just want to defend your guy. Either way, that's there. However, let's look at another president who believes in building a border wall. Well, that's interesting. That looks like that says the Biden administration right there. Let's read. Biden administration presses forward with border wall plans in Texas, angering allies. Even as the president says the barriers don't work, his administration says it will waive environmental laws to build them quickly. And this is from the Texas Tribune, so they would know. Democrats, environmentalists, and advocates for migrants are expressing anger this week as President Joe Biden's administration continues to push forward with plans to build sections of border wall along parts of Texas's border with Mexico. Biden says he has no choice but to continue building the wall, and in a public filing that went into effect Thursday, his administration gave notice that it intends to waive 26 laws and regulations in order to take immediate action to build a few miles of new barrier in Starr County. That sparked outrage among opponents of the wall who noted that Biden campaigned against the border wall when he ran in 2020. This is extremely disappointing and a horrific step backwards that we just didn't expect to see from this administration, said Lakin Jordal, a Southwest conservation advocate for the Center of Biological Diversity. Well, let me tell you something. If you paid attention to his history at all, then you should have saw this coming. Again, the name Democrat in front of you, that doesn't mean anything anymore. That stopped in the 80s at some point. That doesn't mean anything anymore. So stop thinking that it's Republicans versus Democrats. That's not what is happening in society right now. Stop. Unless you're talking about specific social issues, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about policy decisions that are made by the president. There's no difference between Republican and Democrat when it comes to the shit that matters. That is what I'm trying to get across. Let's continue. So this is directly from the White House. Now, I remember also during Trump's presidency that there was a lot of issues that people had with the police. That's when Black Lives Matter became a big movement. That's when, Defund the police became a big slogan. There was a lot of conversations about reforming the way we do policing in the United States. There were conversations on whether police are even necessary in the majority of situations. I remember all of these conversations vividly. Videos coming out every other day of different unarmed citizens being killed by police. The rallies that were going on, good people on both sides, all that rhetoric, right? Like a lot of that was centered around police. Colin Kaepernick, taking a knee. That was during that time. This was all under Trump's era, right? So these were the things that we expected, or not we, but people who voted for Biden expected to get better, right? Basically, he was going to get a handle on this outlaw police situation that was going on, right? Well, this is from the White House.gov, briefing room statements released 2022. Today, the president is providing greater details regarding the Safer America plan. President Biden's fiscal year 2023 budget requests a fully paid for new investment of approximately $35 billion to support law enforcement and crime prevention. In addition to the president's $2 billion discretionary request for these same programs, so that's $37 billion, the Safer America plan details how this $37 billion will be used to save lives and make communities safer. Specifically, the plan funds the police and promotes effective prosecution of crimes affecting families. So just be tougher on crime. Invests in crime prevention and a fair criminal justice system. How do you do that when you're doing this first? You funding the police and promoting effective prosecution of crimes affecting families today, and then you're investing in crime prevention in a fair criminal justice system. You can't do both of those things at the same time. You have to address the problem with the policing before you bring the potential criminals to the criminal justice system, which is court, essentially. If the policing issue isn't fixed first, then there's still going to be this imbalance of over-policed communities and groups not being treated fairly by the justice system just by virtue of the numbers. And when I say that, I mean, again, if there's certain communities that are over-policed and, if you're outside smoking a joint or something like that, and you get arrested, versus in another area where you can do that same thing, but there's barely any police presence unless they're called, there's going to be a difference in those crime statistics. So let's keep going. Invests in crime prevention and a fair criminal justice system. Takes additional common sense steps on guns to keep dangerous firearms out of dangerous hands. What does that mean? If you're saying a ban on assault rifles, or assault weapons, that doesn't actually mean anything. If you're saying a ban on automatic weapons, that ban is already in place. If you're talking about a ban on semi-automatic weapons, that's any weapon that's not automatic. So that doesn't work unless you're talking about like a shotgun or a musket. What are the common sense rules that you're trying to put in place? Do you mean background checks for everybody? I agree. Do you mean like some sort of licensing system similar to driving? I agree. But you didn't say any of that. What is this? Including by calling on Congress to require background checks for all gun sales. Okay. And a ban on assault weapons and high capacity magazines. That's already there. That's already there. You can't have a machine gun. So that's already. So this is, to me, what this looks like is what I just said about the right building the wall being a virtue signal. This looks to be a virtue signal to the left. We're not really going to do anything about guns. We're just going to say a bunch of stuff that sounds good. And to be honest, I don't even know the answer. Again, because, y'all saw my interview that I did with James Fauntleroy, and we had a discussion about gun safety in America. And I admitted it on there. I go back and forth with that all the time because I see good examples of when there's an absence of guns, and the evidence that supports that might be the better policy. But then I also see situations where it's like having guns in the situation saved somebody or it made it better. So I've seen both things play out so many times. I don't really have a solid answer on that. But it's also clear that the Biden administration also doesn't have a solid answer on that. So let's keep going. So this one is from presidency.University of California, Santa Barbara, the American Presidency Project. So let's look at this one. I like this. This one is about COVID. Now, for the record, I am not injecting my opinion on COVID, the vaccines, none of that. Okay. If you've watched this before, I'm pretty sure you know where I stand on all that. But again, this is a relatively new YouTube channel, so I'm not going to be discussing really any further details than that. What I will read to you is how Joe Biden flip-flopped on the vaccines, which is weird to me because everybody tried to make it this politicized issue. When Trump was initially the first person pushing the vaccines hard, he wanted credit for the vaccines. He was basically saying, yo, this is my vaccine and everyone's going to take it and we can get back to regular life and everybody will be good again. That was his whole thing. Well, what were people saying around that time before Joe Biden became president? Because again, the vaccines didn't come out with Joe Biden. The vaccines were here before Joe Biden and after Joe Biden. It's the same vaccine. So with that being said, what did Joe Biden say about the vaccine? And I remember all of this. This is from 2020. So Trump was still president at this time. So this is super interesting. Despite overwhelming testimony from top public health officials that the coronavirus vaccine will be safe and effective, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are spreading fear, fueling anti-vax conspiracy theories, and actively trying to undermine the public's confidence in a vaccine. July 28th of 2020, Joe Biden suggests the coronavirus vaccine won't be real and may not be safe. On August 6th, that same year, he says that the vaccine is not likely to go through all the tests that needs to be done and the trials that are needed to be done. September 3rd, Biden asks, who's going to take the shot? Are you going to be the first one to say, sign me up? 3 days later, Kamala Harris says, I think that's going to be an issue when asked if she would get an approved coronavirus vaccine. What would be the issue if it's approved? The next day, Biden said he would take the coronavirus vaccine only if we knew everything that went into it. When CNN asked Kamala Harris if she would take the vaccine once it's approved, she refused to answer. Well, I think that's going to be an issue for all of us. I will say that I would not trust Donald Trump. So if the vaccine came from Trump, bad, not taking it. I don't suggest anybody else take it. These are their words. This is what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said. This is not what I'm saying. This is what they said in 2020 when Trump was still president and when the vaccine first rolled out. Now, what are they saying now? Same vaccine. Same vaccine. This is from AP. Fact check. Biden goes too far in assurances on vaccine. Whoa, wait a minute. I thought you just said that you didn't trust it because it came from Trump and you're not going to be the first one to sign up and you're not taking it if you don't know everything that's in it. That's what you said. President Joe Biden offered an absolute guarantee Wednesday that people who get their COVID-19 vaccines are completely protected from infection, sickness, and death from the coronavirus. The reality is not that cut and dry. The vaccines are extremely effective, but breakthrough infections do occur, and the Delta variant driving cases among the unvaccinated in the U.S. is not fully understood. Also, Biden inflated the impact of his policies on U.S. jobs created in the first half year in office, misleadingly stating his administration had done more than any other president. He neglects to mention that he had population growth on his side. Okay. You guys can read the rest of that later if you want to. So at the end of the day, this is what I'm here to say. What I'm here to say is don't trust these politicians at the end of the day. That's really what it comes down to. Don't trust them. They're lying to you, especially when you get to a certain level, once you're talking Congress, Senate, probably governors, you know, stuff like that. Like once you get to that level, state senate, probably depending on, you know, where you live. Once you get to a certain level, they're just going to lie and say whatever it takes to get the votes. They just want the power. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. The whole reason that I just did this video is not to just shit on Joe Biden. It is to shit on Joe Biden, but it is also to shit on Trump, because lefties, if you love Biden, then all the stuff he's doing, you should have been cool with it when Trump was doing it too. We didn't even talk about war. Trump started no new wars. He did drop the biggest bomb ever in Afghanistan within like his first, you know, couple of months in office. But he didn't start any new wars. He continued all the wars that were going on. He prevented a war with North Korea, or a potential conflict with North Korea. Biden is funding the Ukraine-Russia war. Biden is funding the Israel-Palestine war. Hasn't stopped any wars. You know, they say we left Afghanistan, but then we started two in its place. So their proxy wars is maybe not our troops, but we're the ones pulling the strings. There was a peace deal that Putin and Zelensky could have signed. Zelensky wanted to sign it. The U.S. talked him out of it. Why is that? So it's to shit on all of the people who love Biden but hate Trump. If you're focused on what matters, which is policy, then none of this should really even be a thing. There shouldn't really be a conflict in your heart. Like, oh, yeah, they're both the same. Like, you know, at the end of the day, you want to talk about the racial stuff? We can go there. Crime bill. Joe Biden did more damage to the black community than Trump did. Trump actually did the First Step Act to help a lot of those same people get out of jail. Just saying. Now, also, everything that I dislike Biden for are the same reasons I dislike Trump. The difference is Republicans, as I say all the time, are just a little bit more honest about what they want. They're a little bit more in your face about what their goals are. It's really the only difference. Democrats try to hide it in worker speak and in social justice speak and in LGBTQ speak and in minority person of color speak. They try to massage it in that. But at the end of the day, you look at on paper, policies. What are they doing? It was the Democrats that broke up the railroad workers strike. Union busting. That's Democrat stuff. I'm just asking. Just be aware. You have more than two choices for president. Is one of those two choices gonna most likely be the president? Yes. But you can send a message with your vote. Don't let people bully you into thinking, oh, well, if you vote for this person instead of Biden, then that means Trump's automatically gonna. Biden had 4 years to prove to us why he deserves his vote, or why he deserves our vote. He hasn't given us a reason. If your only reason for voting for Biden is, oh, Trump's scary, then, I mean, okay, you can vote that way if you want to. I choose not to. I vote for people. I don't vote against people. So if I don't have anybody to vote for, then I won't be voting for president. I'll vote for Senate. I'll vote for Congress. I'll vote for the mayor. I'll vote for the governor. I'll do all that other stuff. I'll vote for all the individual, policies that we can vote for ourselves. The direct ballot initiatives. I'll vote for all of that stuff. I'm gonna still be active because that stuff is actually what really changes what's going on around you. When you vote for the direct ballot initiatives, that directly impacts what's going on in your city and in your state. So I'll be doing that. But, if there's not a solid independent candidate, I liked RFK, but I hate his stance on Israel. I liked Cornel West, but he focuses too much on he focuses too much on things that you can't fix with policy. Like, he wants people to stop hating the LGBTQ community. I do too. How do you fix that in policy? He wants people to, you know, be aware of white supremacy. I do too. How do you do that in policy? These are the issues. Like, you have to talk policy when you're running for a political office. You can't just say all the stuff that makes people feel good. So that's kind of my issue with Cornel West. It's like, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but you don't really seem to have any plan on actually fixing things materially for people. You just want people to, you know, stop using slurs in public. And like, I don't, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that's important, but like, how do you get there through policy? You can't legislate people not to hate each other. So I don't know who I'm voting for. I have no idea. But I do know that it's not going to be Donald Trump, and I also know that it's not going to be Joe Biden. So hopefully some of you guys will take that same approach, because hopefully I was able to just display here, just in a few small instances, how similar they actually are. So with that being said, this is Shane G. This is Politics as Usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. So please make sure you like, you share, and you subscribe for all the latest content. And I'll be back next week. Take it easy. Peace.